Welcome. I'm not sure if everybody was here last time, so I say it again. I'm Jenny Stenberg, and I am a researcher at Chalmers Architecture. And I've been involved in research for about 15 years, focusing social aspects of sustainable development, and especially citizen participation in planning. And this presentation is filmed to be available also for architect students in La Salle and Barcelona, because we have a cooperation with them in our research on compact cities. So today it's going to be about tools and methods, and this is the first time I give this lecture actually, even if I've done this course for many years, because Emilio thought this lecture would be important, and that you have some problems with finding your way forward in what methods to use in your work with citizen dialogue. And it's of course impossible to have a lecture on tools and methods and cover everything, so this is some parts of this literature. I'll start with a literature review. So why do you need methods? This quotation from Maslow tells us one reason. For those who have a hammer for those who only have a hammer in the toolbox, every problem looks like a nail. Very true, and that's why one reason to why you need methods. You need methods to not only to use the methods I present here, but to understand the complexity of working with citizen participation in planning. Because when you come down to tools and methods, you really understand what it's all about and when you do it. So I will go through some of my favorite books, and I will tell you why I think they are very interesting. And this is not all. You have more also in the library with Emilio, and the books are also in my shelf at Chalmers. You can borrow it whenever you want to. 2007, I think it was, when my colleague and me, we took a very quick look at the internet. What methods are there for citizen dialogue? And we found these very fast, 75. And that's not all. So as you understand, it's not possible to tell you everything about all methods. There are a lot out there. Not everybody is very interested in theory and science, but this book I can really recommend. It's a quite thorough description of why action is important, and both in research and in practice. And it goes well together with this book, which is also very interesting. It's the same authors, two of them, as the other one. And it's called Organizational Learning, and it's about how individuals learn from organizations and how organizations learn from individuals. And why this is interesting is, of course, because when working with citizen participation, you work with groups. You work with groups of inhabitants, group of employees, and the integration between them. And of course, in a long run, the organizations, the associations and the municipalities have to learn from their organizations. And also, when new people come in, they have to learn from their organizations. So this is extremely interesting book. I think you should take a very good look at it. The Change Handbook is very thick, but still it's worthwhile take a look at. It describes both theories and more practical initiatives for planning and design. And they also come down to the tools, the actual tools, and describe different tools. It's a very good book to look up, not read the whole book. And they also have this very nice quotation telling us one reason to why we are interested in citizen participation change is disturbing when it's done to us, exhilarating when it's done by us. So what you do together with people would much easier change than if you find out something and then push it on people. Planning Under Pressure is a book about the strategic choice approach. It's a quite broad method as well. As you noticed, I started with the theoretical approaches, and now we scale down a bit and we come to more the middle level. And this is an approach that the book starts with a theoretical description of the background, and then it goes further on with the actual approach for dialogue. And it is it's a dialogue. The aim is to collect a lot of different people, both employees and inhabitants, and a lot of different actors, and to have knowledge production together. It's very interesting, and it has been used a lot around the world. So if you search at the internet, there are plenty of examples when this method is used. Krogstrup, a Danish researcher, she was quite early with this. She writes quite a lot about evaluation. How can citizens and other users be part of evaluation? As you probably know, big funding programs, national funding programs, are always evaluated, and very often these evaluations doesn't make a very big sense in the end. And she writes about how to integrate also citizens in evaluations and make them a learning process for them. This is one very much a favorite, William Peterman. He has been here a couple of years ago visiting the students, and he both describes the theoretical perspective very much in this article, advocacy versus collaboration. And he also goes down to practice and describes how they work in Chicago with participative design and planning, especially with people that come from poor areas. And he's quite old now. He's retired, but he's still working to some extent with these things. And you can look him up at the internet and see if you find the work he's on right now. A favorite you probably heard of quite a lot, Nabil Hamdi. I hope we can get him here because we have contacts with him. He comes to Sweden every year. He's from England. And this book you should really focus on and read the whole. It's very good. It describes how to work with community work and the practice of it. And it also describes the theoretical background to the methods. And he also written this book, Placemaker's Guide to Building Community. He's written a lot of books, very interesting books. And you got it there, yeah. Maybe we'll succeed in inviting him as a guest lecturer during the fall or maybe the spring when you probably are still here, hopefully. This book is also from England. It's researchers on starting out from a theoretical perspective, but more describing how this connects to the practical research and participation at the local level. Very interesting. And another architect, Wendy Sarkisian. She's from Australia. She has written lots of books. She also describes the theoretical perspective and goes down to the practical level, and she has been writing several books about that. And Annichten, she's from the Netherlands. This is her thesis. She's in arts, and she describes this method, process patching, which is very interesting. How to collaborate with students, citizens, and to make not only real projects that happen, but also make these people empowered so they can start working in a field. For example, they make clothing with electrons, what do you call it? Smart clothing, another kind of very interesting stuff. And she's writing about that in real projects for real people. There are, I think, 4 volumes now. I think, Emil, you have them all almost. Or the 4th is on its way here. And she describes how the students then collaborate with researchers in Rotterdam, in an area, and the project is called the Patching Zone, so you can look it up and follow what they do. It's very interesting. And then we come a bit more scaling down. Now we come to handbooks. This is one example of a handbook. There are plenty. OECD describes very much methods used in poor countries and also other countries for collaboration. And there is also one from UN Habitat describing these things. I think you have it on the list. Women's, I don't remember. It's a kind of a workshop that is very used in when you are involved in UN Habitat project. You often use this kind of workshop method for producing knowledge based on what the citizens want to change. And this is Sarkisian again. This is her kind of community level books, and she describes example of how she has been working. And I wish we could bring her to Sweden again, or she hasn't been here actually. Would really like her to come. And here's the Danish book again, Hoffman and Kofod. They were very early. I think this is in the end of the 90s. They wrote this book about the methods. And you maybe not know that, but in the beginning when Agenda 21 came, Denmark was very much in the forefront working with community work and connect social aspects with environmental aspects. They were really good at that. And of course this participatory methods toolkit, which you have also. It has a lot of different methods. Charlotte, for example, you have probably heard of. Citizen jury, consensus conference. And there is also participatory budgeting. There are several books on that if you are interested in linking also to economics. And you can read about budgeting, for example, on this webpage, SKL. It is a joint organization for all municipalities in Sweden, and they have since around 3 years, they have been collecting all the work we do in Sweden on citizen participation in design and planning. So if you go to their Facebook page and be part of it, then you get all the new information, what's going on right now and what they do and what they learn. It's very open. And they also have courses and information of different kinds. It's very, it happens a lot now. 10 years ago, it didn't happen almost anything. So, but since 2 years, it's kind of exploded with working with citizen dialogue. And this book, I will talk a bit more of it later. Methods for meetings. It's done in Malmö, and as you maybe know, Malmö is in the forefront when it comes to citizen dialogue, much better than Gothenburg and Stockholm, I think. So it's very interesting to follow what they do in Malmö. This book is quite old now. I think it's 10 years maybe, but it still is very good, and I will come back to it later. And it has a lot of methods, as you see here. So, what should you do with all this information? You will not have time for reading all nights, maybe. There is a lot to read and learn. But what I would like to say is that, as you probably noticed, these methods have kind of different approaches in the books. They are described from different perspectives. Some are more at the meta theory level, some are more at the theory level, some are at the method level, and some are at the tool level. So this is a difference you can kind of think about when you read about methods and tools. And the more you understand about theories and meta theories, the background to a tool and a method, the more skilled you will get in using these tools professionally in practice. Because the theories and the meta-theories tell you the idea behind the method. What is the theories about learning? What is the theories about action? What is the theories about democracy? So it's very important to understand, because you can't just scan all the methods and pick. You have to understand the relationship between the methods and their relationship to a theoretical perspective. For example, Framtidsverkstad, future workshop. Have you heard of it? It was very used in municipality for some years. It has a theoretical background that is very important to understand, because then you understand what is a method good for and what is a method not good for. For example, can it handle power aspects or not? So if a method can handle power aspects, then you can use it. If it cannot, then you can use it, but you have to add something to handle power aspects. You get it? So that's what's kind of the thing I wanted to kind of transfer knowledge about to even if you only have time to read one book, try to develop a kind of assessment thinking, asking yourself when you read, what purpose has this tool? What phase of the design process is this tool method useful for? And what kind of view on democracy, knowledge, learning, social action is integrated in the method? If you kind of read books in that way, I think you even if you only read one now during this course, then you will develop a very good knowledge in handling participatory methods. And then, of course, probably, even if there are 1,000 methods presented today, maybe and probably you will not find any of them interesting for your project, because the local reality is very different always from place to place, and also reality changed extremely fast. So the methods that were useful 2-3 years ago maybe are just old. So you have to develop a kind of a skill to design your own methods. And that's why I have not given this lecture before, because I thought it would be better if you just designed your own methods. But I understood now that you also need the methods to learn how to design new methods. So I hope this information will help you doing that. So design your own methods. So the next part I will tell you about an example of a design of methods in Hammarkullen, and what we can learn from that. Okay. As I told you before, architect students from this course in earlier years have been involved in work in Hammarkullen and collaborated with us in different ways. Here is an example of a project. I think it was the first year in 2008 actually. They focused on Hammarkullen, which is, as you all know here, and was a neglected barrier in the middle of the area. It was described like that by the inhabitants already in 2008. And this is one of the proposals of how to change it. And thanks to the Center for Urban Studies, which came 2010, and the two research projects, Urban Empowerment and Interplace, and the collaboration with the students, the park actually has changed. There is a stage, there is a football field with artificial grass, and there is a playground. So before it was empty, almost empty, and very dark also at nights. So what happened during this design process? What I will describe is design process of the stage. you saw in the first picture. And it started in 2012 when a municipal housing company called Utveckling Nordost, Development Northeast, succeeded in getting money for a large project in the whole of Angered, 11 million euro, and to work with urban empowerment and the change of the physical environment in Bergsjön, Hammarkullen and some other parts. In Hammarkullen, they employed a social worker in the project, responsible for this project, and she is was a social worker and an architect, and she had also been working as a practitioner at the center, so she knew everybody in Hammarkullen. And she got 2 tasks in the project. One was to implement knowledge from the research project called Urban Empowerment in the city district of Angered. So the knowledge about citizen participation, her job was to try to change the organization of Angered to open up for citizen participation in the long run. That was one task. And then she was in charge for a co-designing task in Hammarkullen, a special one. And the research project Interface, we supported this work, the work with the stage. And our role was to discuss the design of the tools and the planning. We added some funding when we could. For example, it came visitors to the course. We participated in the work. We documented, we analyzed, and learned from it. So we did that during, I think, 2.5 years. And everything is kind of described in this text. You find it on the internet. So so you can take a look at that afterwards. And this press you also find on the internet. It's open, so you can just look it up. So what did she do? Lilika Nord, she was called Lilika Nord, and she worked for the municipality then, a municipal company. And the first thing she did was to make 15 deep interviews with local people around here. And in the application, as you maybe know, when you search for an application from the European Union, you have to say what you're going to do exactly. So what they had put in the application was in Hammarkullen to increase the use of the square and to increase the possibility for people to talk to each other. They're going to buy a tent like that and put it on the square. So that was one of the projects described in the application. And when she made these 15 deep interviews, she learned that everybody, really, inhabitants, employees, everybody said, if you put the tent there, it will be burnt, and people will be very angry. So don't do it. And the reason to why was, there were 2 reasons, main reasons. One was, of course, that the anchoring of the project was not good enough. They had not asked people before they made the application. And the other reason was that there were cut-downs in the school and reorganizations of the schools in Hammarkullen. And it was demonstrations, protests, it was people were very much against it. So coming with a tent put at the square at that point in time wasn't a good solution. So they told her, go back and start from the beginning or give the money back. So that was the option. It was quite a lot of money. So what she did was she went back to her organization and actually succeeded in changing the use of the European Union funding. That is very hard, but she did that. And she also had to switch from the square to the park by different reasons, ownership reasons. And she also then, when everything was fixed, it took some months, she hired 2 skilled architects in dialogues, and they had been part of this course, so they knew methods, and they also knew a lot of people in Hammarkullen. And what they did was to use this book, Methods for Meetings, not only, but as part for their work. So it's interesting. it's a very easy to read book, so you also can give it to inhabitants you work with and say, we use this book, are you interested? You can read it also if you want to, so it's a very good book in that way. But only in Swedish, unfortunately. But it is described in the article in English to some extent for you that don't speak Swedish. So what they did was interviewing again. They informed and they invited. And they also went to municipal actors in the city centre to kind of connect this project to the city centre, the planning office, the real estate office, the Park and Nature administration, and so on. Now I will go through the methods and tools they used. They were quite a lot. So first, the 15 interviews was, of course, a method as well. And also the other interviews. And then they started with an idea party in the park, attracted around 200 inhabitants, and also some more people that passed and got informed. They used music to attract young people, and they used refreshments to attract everybody. It's very effective. They had a storytelling tent. It is described in many of the books I showed you. It's a very interesting way of talking about the future because you start in the back. What was here before and what did I like and what did I not like? So in this park there was from the beginning, what do you call it in English, a building. Kids were allowed to come into the area and build their own small cottages in wood and anything. So it was social workers there all the day, and the kids could come and just build. So it was a fantastic area of woods in many different ways. And then it was animals, so it was goats and pigs and I think a cow and a calf. Calf, you say calf, yeah. And 2 persons worked there. And the first time I came here as a researcher was in '99. I did a course, so I went to a school here, and then I went to this animals park and talked to one of the ladies working there. And they said, when I asked about Hammarkullen, because I had a task to understand about Hammarkullen, she said, "But you have met Lasse and Bosse, sure?" "No," I said. "Oh. This is where I have to start," she said. And then I got contact with social work, Lasse and Bosse, and the course, and the whole development of the center here and so on. This is Lasse, you met him. They made a Your Say map, and it was just a map where you could put things you wanted in the park. They made idea wall, and it was pictures of things, and you could choose either if you liked it, green, or if you did not like it, red. They had round-table conversations with facilitators and documenters, and they had treasure hunting for kids. So in order to learn what the kids wanted with the park, they made it a game, searching for a treasure, and at the same time asking them things about the park. It was 2 other suburb students responsible for the treasure hunting. So this was done during one day. All these tools were used. And then the next step was a workshop. I don't know, 2 weeks later, 3 maybe, where there was a focus group of inhabitants that had volunteered during the dialogues earlier to be part. And they made a selection of the activities proposed in the earlier activities. So here is a list of activities, and they had a selection process of how to do it in a democratic way, in voting. And this is what they talked about in a certain point of the conversation: sit, rest, converse, watch, listen, paint, draw, graffiti, dance, music, climb, coffee, barbecue, eat, swing, ice skate, chess, movie, volleyball. This was the activities that had been presented, and then they choose between them. The next workshop was at the youth center. So in order to really get to the youth, they went there and they used a tool called inspirational photos for starting the dialogue. And the results was, for example, they wanted electronic equipment in the park, they wanted places for barbecue, and they also actually made design proposals at post-its of what these things should look like. And the next workshop was also with the inhabitants in the Red Cottage here at the square. They used inspirational photos again. It was quite a good way of getting people to talk of what they liked and disliked. They also talked about feelings. What did they like the park to express? What feelings should be expressed in the design of the park? Okay, after that the two architects made a proposal. So they sat down and put everything together and came up with a proposal. And they presented this proposal in the park and made a test party of it during one afternoon. They made a full-scale model of chicken wire and corrugated cardboard, and they made this is a circle where the stage should be. They had not decided yet if it was a stage, but maybe at this point in time it was quite clear. People talked about a place to sit, so they made this kind of sofa inspired by Gaudi, and a model of wireless speaker for smartphones, just something to put the phone inside and then to make it kind of easy and not expensive. And they also informed by passing people about the project. Lots of people didn't know about the project and were not involved. But as the Hammarkullen is in the middle of Hammarkullen and everybody passed, a lot of people got informed because they had this information in the park lots of times. And they had also ordinary architect sketches to show the idea. And after this test, then a group of inhabitants went inside to make an evaluation of the proposal, what was good, what was bad. And these things were kind of added at that point in time as something they thought the architects had not worked with enough. Lightning, trees and water. How to handle the trees, take down some or not take down. And they also wanted water in the park, which has not yet succeeded, I think. Maybe they have a shower. Oh yeah, they have this now, yeah. And lighting is very important because it was very dark. I think it's better now, but I think maybe there is also need for more light. So they made another workshop, this time with artists, and it's a long story about the artists. I can't tell you the whole story, but it was very good that they came to this workshop. And we also had a visitor from South Africa, Karin Schmatz, which is an architect that work with participation in poor areas in Cape. And she was here to give a lecture for the students, and also took part in the workshop. And here is an idea from a youth group, the dream of the youth group. And at this workshop they focus quite a lot on patterns and colors for the design. And also one of the artists were very good at caricatures, so he made everybody. It was very nice. So these results were important, but maybe most important was that many people, youth, the artists, and also women's group said, we want to be part of building this stage. Now it was a stage. So it was kind of clear that they didn't think it was a good idea just to bring a builder from the outside and making this design. And they made one more workshop at a preschool, and it was small kids, so they focused on patterns and colors for the design. So then I went back made a proposal again, changed things they thought should be changed due to the dialogue, and they made an exhibition, and not in the city center or any place outside of Hammarkullen, but they choose to have it in the tram stop because this is where people pass all the time, especially since the tram stop there is only one serving 8,000 persons. Of course, everybody passed there. And they had the exhibition Friday afternoon at 4, between 3 and 5 or something, and it really passed quite a lot of people. So this is the proposal. Stage with mosaic, sofas, sitting places, and the activities that were going to be facilitated by this design. And here's a traditional architect sketch as well, and here are the kind of the artifacts that were designed. And it was very interesting, this presentation here, because I haven't talked so much about what I mean by interface, but Lasse talked about interspace, as you know, maybe he talks about that. I think for me, interface is a place that works democratically for dialogue between different actors with very different power. So you can say that choosing this place and having done this very thorough design process during some months, 3-4 months, made it possible actually for people to have a very interesting dialogue here. And it was not a traditional presentation where the people stood in front of everybody and talked. It was, as you see, it was like this all the time. People came, stopped, talked, said what they thought, and left. And a lot of people also came from the city center, from the planning office, from the real estate office, and the parks and administration. So 4 things were discussed here that had been talked about earlier, but now it was kind of clear. People said you must budget for something more to refurbish also the rest of the park. It had not been refurbished for 40 years, so it really needed money. And kids had been working with it years ago, the design. So it was really time. And after this meeting, the woman from the Park and Nature Administration, she could say that yes, we will do something with the whole park. And she had managed to fund budget for it. The artists talked about their design skills. They said, we want to design something in Hammarkullen. Why not a statue? And they had talked about that quite a lot. Why are we not asked to design things here? Why do you attract people from the outside to design things for us instead of we doing it ourselves? We are skilled in it. And there is not a statue yet, but maybe it will come. But one of the artists have been involved in the mosaic design. You'll see it later. They also talked quite a lot about the worsening situation at the square with drug dealing. It was maybe 2012 was maybe the worst year, I'm not sure. But people were extremely worried, and the schools, as you know, had cut downs, and at the square people felt very unsafe at the square many times of the day. So they said that you shouldn't use this design project for making some kind of extended social tenure. You know what tenure is? Procurement. How you buy the builder that's going to build the building. So they wanted some kind of social aspect added to that process. And actually this took place, as you know, because I showed it last time. But first I will show you the architect drawings of the artifacts designed. And also tell you that now the Park and Nature Administration took over the process because it was them that have to make the assignment for a builder because it is their land. So it has been a collaborative process all the time. So in the research project, this question was very interesting for us. How can built environment facilitate for a desired social development in a community? We asked ourselves if social tenure could be an answer to that question, and it actually did. So it was interesting. As you know, 2 youth, because I told you last time, I think, 2 youth were employed during 3.5 months by this builder, Stenberg, and it was a demand to get the job to employ 2 youth from Hammarkullen that were unemployed and had some education in building construction. And they also got a union salary, so it was not a practice, it was an ordinary job. Stenberg expressed an extremely content with this choice because not only that these youth worked very well, but also the working place was kind of protected during the whole summer. Nobody destroyed anything that summer. And usually they have a big problem when they have workspaces in areas in summertime because there are so many kids that are out of school and they don't have a job, and they make problems sometimes in the building sites. But here nothing happened. And the stage took form during the summer, and they also engaged, but this was not a demand, but this was done anyway. They engaged 5 other youth from Hammarkullen. They got paid also for summer job, 3 weeks of summer job. And their job was to make this design of the mosaic all over the stage. And they had a supervision of one of the artists I mentioned before. And actually they were 2, because he collaborated also with a woman from the center, city center. And they have continued actually to work with mosaic, and you see mosaic all over Hammarkullen now, and there are in Biskopsgården and Hjällbo and at many places now.
The city center.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. It's an easy way of making design together. And then there was the inauguration with an artist born in Hammarkullen playing when the stage was finished. So this participatory design process led to one way of carrying out socially responsible public procurement. And this is interesting. This is quite new in Sweden. It exists, but not as an ordinary process. A couple of years ago, environmental aspects were included in procurement, but now it's time for social aspects to be included. So this project showed how social aspects could be included in a way that gave power to local actors, to youth, to the schools, to the youth center. And actually, as they now tried it out and are pleased with it, it could imply systemic change. If politicians now make it an ordinary process to always include social aspects in one way or the other in procurement of building projects. And I think it will happen because everybody are so pleased with the result. So we will see what happens. And I think it's quite important that when we architects, planners, or any design profession, when we work, that we think about how will these things that I do influence also the future and the systems of planning. Okay. Methods for meeting. I will say something more about it because I think it's a very interesting book. As you see, it has a lot of methods. They describe 18 tools or methods, and it's very interesting. But even more interesting is that they describe the phases of a design process. Reflect on the prerequisites, search for partnerships on the visible, create togetherness. Very often, this has already been done when you add inhabitants to a process. So it's very important that you really do this before you start to create the togetherness. Produce a joint strategy, go from strategy to action, evaluate and learn from the project, care about what happens afterwards. And here you see an example of how this may be done. This is an example from Biskopsgården in 2006 when I was part of a citizen participation group, 20 inhabitants making suggestions for densification, and it actually also the planning office took all the ideas and implemented it in their plan, so it was really a success. There's one way of doing it. You put the phase, you put the time period, the focus of the phase, the methods, tools used in the phase, the core of the work, and then this expected results. And then you do that for every phase. And this is kind of a way to in the group responsible for a design process, decide what are we going to do, and also to really look at all the phases. This is in Sweden, but in Biskopsgården we put this seventh phase in the method because we thought it was very important to care about what happens afterwards. This is the whole picture of a planning process as described by this book, and the seventh phase added by us. And actually the seventh phase is everything I described about the building of the stage, including citizen in the actual building process. This goes into this last phase. So without that work, you will not really know if what you do will make a difference in the future. Maybe it does, but you will not have any knowledge about it or control over it if you are not very focused on also the seventh phase. So everything I told you about the tools used in the park, the idea party, it was part of the create togetherness phase, for example. Everything I told you about the workshops and the test party was part of produce a joint strategy. And then of course we had this that was part of take care of what happens afterwards. And I think it's quite important to say that if you're a consultant, you should really, for the first thing, budget for this phase. Also, when you say you can make a project for someone, you should really budget for this phase. But you should also make sure that you have a mandate to work in it, and you shouldn't actually take a job if you're not allowed to be part also of the phase after the project is considered finished. And I think one reason to why it was possible at all to work about social tenure was this new regulation for the districts. It came 2011, and it was developed at the same time as this project was going on. And it says, for example, this is just one quotation: the district committees shall act to strengthen all citizen participation and engagement that reinforce and prepare for a locally positive societal development and have the respect for the equal value of all human beings as point of departure. And later in the text it also says that it has to do with the built environment, not only social aspect. So social and physical aspects were going to be integrated. And so with this text, the politicians in the city centre said to its 10 districts that we want you to take responsibility for citizen dialogue in the future. And they had not so much education in it. Now they actually get an education from the city centre in citizen dialogue. because they need, of course, to develop their skills. And I think this kind of thinking had started in the city center, and the project came in the right time for social tenure to really be taken seriously. I mean, if this woman from the Park and Nature Administrations wouldn't have come to all these meetings, there wouldn't have been any social tenure, because she's the reason to why it happened, actually. So integration between different stakeholders is really very important. So you need methods for that too, of course, to integrate inhabitants and municipal employees. And I also haven't mentioned, but it's not only the district regulations that have citizen participation in it, but also the city's budget. If you read it, I think that you can find it in English at the internet. You can see that participation is everywhere. The politicians really talk about that as something very important to develop. Okay, so this is the whole picture of the co-designing process. Don't just look for methods. Look to understand theories and take care of the whole process. That's the message. Thank you.